I talked about this before about how the best way to do your reviews is using a paper system and to do it offline and not inside the computer. And that's what I'm going to talk about here. So if you're interested in using a digital system and doing most of your review digitally, that's going to come up in a later video. So this is on how to organize your paper files so that you can use them for reviewing. The first thing, and this is the hardware that I talked about last video, is getting a file cabinet system set up. So even if you're using 3-ring binders, that may be working for you. It depends on how often you're accessing stuff. I used to use a 3-ring binder system, and I just found that the binders are very expensive, and you have to 3-hole punch everything, and things can get misaligned, and it's just not as efficient a storing method, just in terms of how much space you use as a filing cabinet. Part of the reason why is a 3-ring binder has a certain amount of paper it can hold in it, but until you fill up the complete capacity of that binder, you're wasting space on your bookshelf or wherever you're storing those 3-ring binders. On the flip side, in a file cabinet, you're not wasting any space, so you can just move folders around, and the hanging folders, you can just take them from place to place really easily, so you don't have that problem, and you have a much larger amount of information that you can store in a much smaller space, because you've got 4 or 5 drawer cabinets, and each one of those can hold about at least a case of paper, which is 5,000 pages. So that should be more than enough. You shouldn't be really needing to get more than maybe one new file cabinet every year or two. It depends on how much stuff you're going through, obviously, but it's the best system out there for storing paper files. So get hanging folders. Make sure that the file cabinet you buy supports hanging folders, and make sure it has the skeleton or the frame within it that will hold those if it's not built into the drawer. So some drawers, the metal goes all the way up to the top, and then it's just the side of the drawer is what you're hanging off of. Other times the drawer only goes halfway up, and then there's this frame inside, this just metal frame that the files hang down from. So to make sure that all those are in there, you can usually find a 4-drawer cabinet for about $150 from Staples. So if you want to go used, then go that way. If you're on a bit of a budget, then check out Craigslist and just look for file cabinets, and you can find good file cabinets for $40-50, sometimes even a little bit cheaper than that. So the only thing to watch out for if you're ordering something online or off Craigslist is make sure that it has those racks, those frames inside each one of the drawers. Sometimes they'll be in some of the drawers, not others, stuff like that. And if you need to buy a new frame, it's going to be about $15-20 per drawer. So definitely make sure you check on that before you buy anything. The other 2 things that are important are a tape dispenser with tape. That's for each thing that you print out. The first page, the top page, you take a piece of tape and you just fold it over the right side of that piece of paper, and that's going to be a little tab on that piece of paper, so you can separate each document that you print out. It's a really easy way to just keep each document separated. Right after I print anything out, I just put one of those little tabs on the right hand side, so it's sticking out about 1/2 inch to 1 inch, and that's it. And the other thing you can do is, if you want to mark the priority or the value of different documents, you can put the piece of tape up or down different levels. So something that's really important, you would put that tape right at the top right corner. If it's not as important, you put it in the middle or the bottom right corner. And that's another thing that you can use to just kind of make note to yourself how important things are, especially if you have a stack of maybe 20-30 different things you print out over the span of months or years. It can be helpful. The other major thing is the post-it colored tags. So these are about 1/2 inch wide. They're about 2 inches long. They've got a little piece of sticky on them, and they're different colors. And you use these to keep track of, and this is really the essence of how your review system works, is you use it to keep track of when each thing should be reviewed in your system. So this is going to keep track of how often it should be reviewed. And then you have a separate schedule that tells you when you review things, depending on what color it is. So it keeps it really simple. These things are very inexpensive, so it's not like you're gonna have to spend a lot of money to get these colored tags, and they're really useful. So and I've used them for other things, like I'm learning acoustic guitar right now, I'm learning piano right now. I just put these things on the fretboard or on the keyboard, and it helps me keep track of where everything is and make sense out of it. Then later I can remove it. So the great thing also is that these things aren't super adhesive, so they pull off really easily with no residue. And that means that when you take something, you put it into the next stage of the review system, you just put on a new sticky and you're all good to go. You don't have to like cut anything off or anything like that. The next major part of the system is your learning projects. So anything that you want to review should go into one of these learning projects, or you've got a separate system, and this is something I talked about in the note-taking section. So check that out if you want to learn how to really organize all your documents on your computer and offline using this one system. But basically how it works is you have you number each major section of your life. So number 0 is meta. That's where you keep track of all your systems, all your documentation, how everything works. Number 1 is your business, your career, your profession, your job. That's where you keep all that sort of stuff. Section 2 is your personal life, so your financials, maybe medical information, passwords, other keys, stuff like that. Anything involved in your personal life. Number 3 is relationships. That's your family, your friends, your mentors, mentees, business acquaintances, people you keep in touch with, all that, all those relationships. So then number 4 is your health. So keeping track of what you're eating. If you like to cook, keep track of that stuff. Diet, your sports, any exercise you do, going to the gym, yoga, calisthenics, stretching, whatever sort of stuff that you do would go into those categories. And then anything else, any other major roles you have, side businesses, previous businesses you had, any other big projects you're working on, that would all go in that root folder. And then you have one folder that's your learning projects. So that could be number 6 for you. And also, if you don't want to use 0, you could just use 5 as your meta instead of 0. So it would go 1 business, 2 personal, 3 relationships, 4 health, 5 meta, 6 learning projects. Within learning projects, you're doing your repetitions by giving numbers to each one of the learning projects you're working on. And most of the time you'll be able to fit these learning projects into one of those 5 categories I already mentioned. So 0 through 100 would be meta level projects or systems type stuff. 100 through 200 would be business and career and job related stuff. 200 through 300 would be personal. 300, 400 would be relationships. 400 to 500 would be your health. And so then the rest of those would go into role models. So you can also organize your role models into those categories. And if you don't think this is enough, you can use a 4-digit system and then just use the same pattern. But the thing is, once you have these numbers, they keep all of your stuff permanently organized into a standard array or a standard format. So the order of the folders is never going to change. And that's a big weakness of just organizing things alphabetically. The other thing is that as you add the numbers, you know anything that's been numbered is organized. Anything that you haven't numbered yet isn't organized. So it's a great way to keep track of how much progress you're making in all these different areas. Because this is something that if you really go around and organize all the different aspects, it's going to take quite a while. This could be something that takes months or even years, and you just kind of do it piecemeal. But it gives you so much freedom. It gives you so much peace of mind when you finally have it done. And it's good to start out now, and you can start with your learning projects, and then because that's probably where you want to get the most amount of repetition. And then the other areas you don't need as much repetition, so those can be more low priority things, and you can tackle those later. But the numbering is really important for keeping stuff in order. And once you have stuff numbered in your digital system, that can also transfer over to anything in OneNote, Evernote, Gmail, your offline files, anything that you print out. And that's how you're going to name the folders that go into your file cabinet, is with those numbers. So first you put the number, and then you put the name of the learning project, and then you order the folders in your filing cabinet by number, so that over time you actually memorize these numbers. Even if you're not trying to, you just see it enough times and you eventually memorize, just kind of like if you ever in when you were in school and you had course numbers for each class that you took. It's the same sort of thing. You just eventually you memorize those numbers, and it becomes very easy because anytime you're searching for something related to that project, you just put in that unique 3-digit number and only stuff related to that is going to pop up. So it's a great way to also develop a shorthand that you can use so that things match up and it's easy to find things and search for things. The other thing is keeping track of when has something been printed. And this becomes a problem because you eventually forget what you printed out, what you didn't. It becomes easier once you have a numbered system like this, because when you're going through and reviewing these folders, you eventually remember what's in there, and that's a solution to that. And so just to keep it organized when you're going in and using the digital folder for your learning project, and you want to figure out, okay, where should all this stuff go? Has any of this stuff already been processed? All I do when I print something out is put a P- prefix, or I use a printed folder, depending on how much stuff is in there. So sometimes, like especially when I'm just starting a learning project, I'm not going to be super organized about everything. It's more about collecting a bunch of interesting stuff, figuring out what I want to print out and read so that I can go and focus on that and make sure that I stay focused and get out a good block of time where I'm not at the computer, I'm not distracted, I'm not staring at a screen. There's also a tool called Batch Renamer that's really good for renaming files in bulk. So you can use this to set the prefix numbers for a bunch of folders, because it can just go in a series. It can go 001, 002, 003. So it can be easy to start out with alphabetical and then just match that up with the numbers, and then you can shift it around later. But same thing with role models. So anytime you find a role model, it can be a person, it can be a business, it could be a website, it could be anything that you like and you want to model something from that. You just create a folder for that, and now anytime you find anything about that person or a video or whatever it is, now you have something, a place where you can put all that stuff. And then when you print it out, you put it into that folder and you're all good to go. And all your role models, now they've all got their own folders and they're all in one place in 1 or 2 drawers or whatever of your file cabinet. So it's a really great system. It's really flexible and it's super simple, and it's just really easy to work with. And I've been using it for years, and it's just a really great way to keep stuff organized. So may seem like, well, why do I have to do all this stuff? Why do I need to number everything and get all this stuff organized? But it removes so much stress. You no longer have to worry about things like, oh, I don't know where that is, I can't find that thing. And it's just, you're amazed at the ideas you had, the things you were reading months or years ago, and they're still really relevant. And you did so much work, and you start to realize, wow, I just would have lost all of this if I didn't have this learning system. And you realize how many dozens, if not hundreds of hours you waste just not having your stuff organized, which is completely separate from memorization. The other thing about this is, and we'll be getting more into this later, is this simple scheduling system. So that's the next video. Actually, I'm going to save that for the next video, so I'll see you there.